Now you might be reading the title of this video and thinking, haven't you made this exact same video in the past? The answer is yes, but I'm gonna have to reinforce my position because back then, and even till this day, my most popular videos are my old reviews, which I don't really mind, but as a result of people mostly watching my cartoon reviews, I'm more inclined to receive comments from people asking me to review something or to update my opinions on things I talked about in the past. Now make no mistake, I do appreciate the fact that there are people out there that are interested in what I have to say and what are my opinions regarding television series that are out there. But I think I should make this very clear. 99% of the time, if someone asks me to review something, the answer will be no, because I'm not a reviewer anymore. I'm not gonna lie, this is not gonna be a very fun video to make. Well, actually, that's not true. Fun it definitely will be. But it's certainly not a video I wanted to resort to because at the end of the day, I don't really want to antagonize anyone that likes reviewing stuff or sharing their positive or negative opinions on film, games, etc. For the most part, it's whatever, it doesn't really affect me. But since I get asked to review stuff more often than not, I decided to write a small little piece on essentially the main reasons why I don't do the whole review shtick. So the first reason has to do with the fact that the media discussion community has created this false sense of hierarchy. What do I mean by this? Well, it's basically split between three ranks. The lowest one applies to who are basically the noobs, plebs, or maybe even just people that are too young to quote-unquote think objectively about the media they watch. The middle rank can sometimes be intertwined with the last one, but it mainly applies to people who are considered fanboys, the group of people that are labeled as blindly defending the things that they like even when they fuck up. Then the highest rank applies to the critics, elitists, enthusiasts, whatever one you call them. You know what I'm talking about. The ones that jerk each other's 3x3s and put this facade of having the authority to critique media, regardless of whether or not they've even studied arts to begin with, as long as you use big words, quote some obscure film techniques, and, well, sound reasonable, or at least as reasonable as you can get away with. Now, the main issue I have with this is that treating it as a social hierarchy feels rather delusional. For example, I've seen so-called fanboys having more reasonable opinions than the elitists/critics. I mean, think about it. If you're a fanboy, as religious and apologetic you may be, in all likelihood, you probably have better knowledge of the series you're defending than the person who hates it, because you spend so much of your time dedicated to the series, and it gets to the point where sometimes I'll see fans bringing up completely reasonable arguments in defense of their series, but the response to them boils down to, oh, you're just a fanboy. Oh, you're just nitpicking my points. Meanwhile, I nitpick the fuck out of the series I'm criticizing because I guess it's okay when I do it, but when other people call me out for having flawed arguments, they're focusing on the little details that don't matter. Really love the double standard there. I've also seen people considered noobs having better arguments because when you think about it, if you're some kind of online critic, you've probably been consuming media for years, if not over a decade. And at some point, the media that you first fell in love with isn't going to stay the same. As time moves, the trends are going to change. And more than often, I'll see people growing jaded enough to the point where they start treating the newer content without the fairness and intellectual curiosity that they deserve, because instantly they will fail to live up to the unreasonable standards you made up based on your experience as a veteran, regardless if it even benefits the media in question based on the status of the current market. Meanwhile, newer fans have fresher minds and tend to be more open-minded, therefore sometimes their analysis is actually better, more contextual, and well-rounded. This is why, at least to me, for the most part, this hierarchy really doesn't exist, and these groups of people kind of just belong to the same rank as far as how important their opinions are. And it's really awkward because a lot of the times the critics, when you ask them, as a way to cover their asses, they will insist on the idea that they respect other people's opinions. They say that everyone's allowed to have their own opinions. They respect different takes, and they'll even say, hey man, it's great that you enjoy the thing that I don't like. However, a lot of the time, when you actually hear what they have to say during the reviews, it's very clear that they don't actually believe that. It really doesn't take that much cross-examination to notice that you clearly view your own opinions as superior to others. I don't know if critics think that if they acknowledge that people have differing opinions, then it absolves them of any responsibility for the condescending statements made during their comments. And I wouldn't even care if you believe you had more informed opinions if it wasn't for the fact that once we start breaking down the points you make, we eventually realize that you're not as informed as you think you are. Like, if you're gonna act all big brain, I'm gonna treat you like you are, and will be very much disappointed when I found out that your intellectual abilities are not as superior to the normies and fanboys as you pretend like they are. It's why I don't usually review stuff because, frankly speaking, I don't think I'm intellectually qualified, and I fucking gone up to that. This is why I respect content creators like Globecus, someone who will hesitate to review a game that he thinks is too biased, and is willing to investigate the meta of games that he doesn't understand. This isn't just a problem with review culture, I think it's emblematic of the way we use social media, that it drives people to inflate their egos, and this brings me up to the second reason for why I don't fuck with reviews anymore. The people involved in the discussions will often insult and berate the creators in spite of how ignorant they are. Most projects out there, whether they're movies, songs, television shows, or video games, take years to be made. Lots of planning, high expenses, plenty of labor put into production, loads of menial tasks, tons of talent, research, and cleverness on the part of the team involved in order to construct the final product. So when I see people who a lot of the times never even created anything on the same scale in their entire lives make up their minds about how to feel about the piece of media after only experiencing it once, sometimes they haven't even seen them in their entirety, and shit out a YouTube video produced in over a month or two maximum, no research on the subject, no inside information on the production, it's just an endless stream of rambling about their experience with the piece of media, while also talking down to the creators. It's kind of mind-blowing just how incredibly disdainful people will act towards creators, including ones that work on the series they like, treated them like they're children that have no self-awareness, all because of what? They made something that you didn't enjoy? It's really ironic whenever I see people accusing creators of having massive egos when they try to defend their works, as if wanting to defend something that took away your sweat and tears is even an unreasonable thing. But dude, you degrading and treating creators like you're some kind of school teacher, citing basics of storytelling and art design as if they didn't learn that during their years of studying and practicing art, that, my friend, is the definition of ego. You're treating them as if they were incompetent gorillas who don't know how to do their jobs, even though a lot of the times the reason why things turn out to be bad have less to do with their talent but more so to do with how badly managed the project was. To anyone who wonders why it seems like some creators ignore criticism, I really want you to look back at some of the things you say and ask yourself, if you had a job and you worked on it for years, spent endless semesters to earn your certificate, and someone that you don't know and has nowhere near the same professional experience as you start berating and lecturing you on how to do your own job. Meanwhile, you were the one grinding for 40 hours a week without counting extra time, while the other person is just some faceless condescending snub on the internet. Sometimes I'm asked if I've ever changed my mind on things I've expressed in the past. Now, I'm unable to confirm if my stances really have changed or not because it would require me revisiting a lot of the cartoons I reviewed, which is not something I'm going to do anytime soon. But what I will say is that I can't stomach my old reviews because they're guilty of the exact same issue I'm complaining about right now. The truth is, I care way too much about the media I consume. I've invested so much of my time and commitment to creative endeavors driven by passionate artists. Unironically, my favorite videos I've ever made are my AMVs because it allowed me to highlight moments of anime series that I love, and I got the chance to play songs from some talented musicians on Epidemic Music because I have the license to use their songs in my videos. For so long, film, animation, music, and video games have played a huge role in influencing me, and I have a lot of respect for anyone involved in creating stuff out there, especially because I know how hard it is, how difficult it can be to convey your creativity and expressing yourself as a result of it, constantly attempting to improve and coming to grips with the end result of what you've already created. I say this as someone who has tried to write fictional stories in the past, and I've never been able to fully commit to it. This is why I get upset when it comes to intermediary factors such as companies failing to publish their works, providing lackluster platforms for both creating and engaging with the piece of media, violating consumer rights, establishing a terrible work environment for creators, and abusing their proprietary licensing. Those things upset me because they are interfering with both the artist's creative expression and the viewer's ability to experience them. But when it comes to people who critique media, it feels like a diversion of the attention from appreciating the power of entertainment media to having a cultural dispute on which opinions on media are the most valid, even if they're heavily biased, completely disregarding the intent of the original work, lack of sympathy and understanding of the real difficulties that comes with managing creative projects, and sometimes just straight up being intellectually dishonest. Now, I'm sure you may be thinking, so what? You just want all opinions on the internet to be positive? Is no one allowed to criticize media when they're bad? That's not really what I'm saying. In fact, in all honesty, I think opinion pieces, even when they're negative, are just a part of the natural phenomenon that is a result of the massive influence that art has on people. Most people watch TV, play video games, and sit on theaters to watch movies. It's a part of a lot of people's lives, and with that comes the natural desire for people to express those feelings and experiences. And to be real, I think it's great. I think the fact that people feel empowered to share their opinions on media is a great thing, and I don't think anyone should be discouraged from expressing themselves if they wish to. However, me acknowledging the need for open discussion isn't the same as me liking, respecting, or in any way wish to participate in it, because I know how much negative opinions can pollute the discourse, to the point where I've seen plenty of series having their reputation tainted, sometimes for reasons that are straight up just false. I mean, for how long people have believed that The Lion King was a ripoff of Kimba the White Lion, and it was only until Adam from Your Movie Sucks made a 2-hour long video that thankfully gained enough views that this false narrative is starting to be exposed for what it actually is. Complete bogus. Another point I would like to make is that positive opinion pieces can be just as guilty of exactly the same issues I pointed out earlier, just in a different way. Now, I'm not gonna call out anyone specific. In fact, to be honest, what I'm about to complain about is something that literally everyone has been guilty of at least once. So you'll have some dude that finished watching a movie, thought it was a banger-ass fucking film, and is now compelled to share how much he loves it on the internet. As a way for him to prove how amazing his new favorite movie is, he will compare it to other movies out there and explain why his movie is superior on all points of comparison. Comparing two pieces of media is always a recipe for disaster because 99% of the time they're not even trying to achieve the same thing, but moreover, his attempt at proving that his favorite movie is exceptional tends to boil down to a lot of inane statements. An example I have of this, and this might actually be the most infuriating one I've seen because it literally happens pretty much on a yearly basis. Every year, we'll see 1 or 2 anime series that get a little bit mainstream, and then I'll see a bunch of people who know nothing about anime will start talking about how the new series has female characters that are quote-unquote finally well written. Now, the thing is, what annoys me about these comments is that most of the time, when they say that the female characters in the series are uniquely good, they're more so referring to how often they participate in battles, because there's this stereotype that female characters in anime don't do anything in comparison to the male characters. Now, first of all, the fact that people are using battles as a metric for how well written a character is already kind of strange, but that's not my main issue. Really what bothers me is the fact that this complaint largely applies to very specific battle-oriented shonen series, but people will encompass all of anime, as in decades of history, to prove their point. And you know, it doesn't even matter whether or not I like the character they're referring to or the series. As someone who has watched plenty of anime, and would consider most of my favorite anime characters to be female, it is incredibly insulting to hear these comments. It doesn't even matter if they're trying to be positive or compliment another series that I like. You are shitting on a wide pool of characters that would piss me beyond belief if they were offhandedly categorized as bad characters, especially when the people making these comments probably haven't even heard of them. They talk about anime as a whole just to hype up their stupid fucking series that they'll probably forget about once the next mainstream show comes in. This is literally what I see every time I keep up with public consensus and discussions on the internet. It's like I said earlier, it's a fucking civil war of opinions where people tend to be egocentric and dismissive about the things they talk about. And in all honesty, I just have no interest in it. I'm not interested in participating in this trashy, polluted wasteland of hot takes. And I get that it's fun. I know how relatable and cathartic it can be to follow influencers dedicated to critiquing media. I know what it feels like to consume something that's boring as fuck, witnessing a series that you like slowly going downhill, when you have a new or old series that is beloved by everyone and feeling the need to call it overrated, or just wanting to share how cool you think a series is and how better it is than everything else you're watching. I get all of that, But I'm not interested in getting involved in these discussions. 9 out of 10 times it results in me feeling like intellectual discourse is fucked forever. And the worst feeling I could ever have is watching a bad video with stupid points and other stupid people believing in it and try to convince others that their points are valid. And sure, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I can try to fight the tide all day, but if the cycle is just gonna repeat itself the next time someone spews out shitty takes, then in all honesty, I just don't even bother with it, especially when at the end of the day, none of this even matters. Opinions really don't mean that much. Whether or not something is good or bad is largely subjective, so instead of obsessing over what hot takes people have to share, I'd rather shift my attention to something else. Of course, sometimes I do feel compelled to talk about some pieces of media. A more recent example would be my video on Blue Reflection, which I'm quite proud of, but it's more of an exception than the norm. Additionally, when I first got into the review crave, it was back when I was addicted to the likes of Screen Junkies, CinemaSins, Chris Stuckman, Your Movie Sucks, and plenty of other channels that I found great resonance with as someone who was a film enthusiast. And even though I'm forever grateful to these kind of creators for the amount of influence they had on me, I am not at a phase of my life where I need to justify the way I feel about every piece of media that I consume. If I like something, I'll give my money to it and promote it. If I don't like it, won't even bother giving my attention to it. Anything beyond that feels like extra weight to a set of hobbies that for the most part, I engage with it to have a good time, distract me from stressful thoughts, and learn new things about the human mind. I don't always need to document my full opinions on everything I consume, nor do I think you should feel concerned about what other people have to say. At the end of the day, I honestly believe that there are more meaningful conversations and activities that you can partake in besides whether or not Kaguya-sama should have been at the top of the mal charts. Also, one last thing, to all of you who think are smarter than the creators you critique, I would encourage you to grab a pen and write your own original stories. If you're so confident about what it takes to write a good story, maybe you should try to put that into practice. Oh, and once you're done, I will happily pay you to send me the script so that I can review it. And you have my word when I say I will give the most honest, unbiased, and objective critique. So if you have the balls, practice what you preach and send me the Google Doc.